Greetings and welcome to a special bonus episode of the Remarkable Retail podcast recorded live on the stage at the NRF Big Show in New York City. Our special guest joining us on the stage is Gretchen Ganc, Executive Vice President, Strategy and Analytics for the Container Store. Our session, entitled Shift Happens, Choose Remarkable or Irrelevance, was produced by our presenting sponsor, Market Dial, and we pick up the conversation after a brief presentation by Steve on the state of retail as we pinpoint and discuss 3 of the 8 essentials of retail as articulated in its best-selling book. Let's listen in now.
In the book, and this is really going to set up how we're going to go through the rest of the material, is there's a framework that I call the 8 essentials of remarkable retail. There's a chapter on each of these 8. Today is kind of a guidepost. We're going to structure this around 3 of those essentials. So that's the balance of the program. So without further ado, let me invite Michael and Gretchen up, and we will get into the heart of the matter in the Container Store strategy.
All right, thanks, Steve. Great to be on the stage with you, Gretchen. Welcome.
Thank you.
So let's take a look at the Container Store. But tell us about the purpose, the soul, what makes it different, and maybe something that might surprise us about the Container Store.
Yeah, so I'm so glad everybody's here. I hope everybody has a sense of who the Container Store is, but if you don't, I think something you might be surprised about is the Container Store is so much more than containers. We've got thousands of solutions for organizing and for storage, but we also have a robust custom spaces business. So we have 3 proprietary lines, Alpha, Avera, and Preston. So we can design a custom space for any size, any style, any budget. And then we also offer professional organizing services. So there's so much that we can do that goes way beyond containers. I think for those of you who do know us and hopefully love us, you might be surprised to find out we only have 95 stores today. We're about to celebrate our 45th birthday this summer. We just hit the $1 billion mark, and yet we're only at 95 stores. But we've got our eyes focused much further than that. We're looking at $2 billion, not $1 billion. And we know that we have the potential to more than double our store base. We're a purpose-led organization. Talk a lot about our foundation principles. They're the standards that drive how we show up for our customers and for each other. And at the end of the day, it's all about this mission of transforming lives through the power of organization. Consumers are busy. They're really busy these days, and they're dealing with a lot. Between travel, between work, and trying to take care of their families, sometimes multiple generations, the thought of keeping an organized house can be incredibly overwhelming. But that's why we're here. We've got great products and solutions, so if they want to do it themselves and bring that together, that's great. And if even that feels overwhelming, we can come into their homes and help them with that.
All right, well, thanks. Good brief introduction. We're going to really delve into a bunch of this stuff. Steve, I'm going to hand you the clicker back.
Thank you.
As you said, of the 8 essentials, we're going to kind of what you call guideposts. We're going to go into 3 of them, and then we're going to chat about your perspectives, Gretchen, on each in the Container Store. So very briefly, and again, everyone, you can join us at the Market Dial booth. There will be Steve's book that you can have that goes in depth and in detail, as does our podcast, actually, in the first season. But take us through this first one, harmonized. What do you mean by harmonized?
Sure. So harmonized is kind of my term for omni-channel. I think like many of us, we're getting sort of tired of the term omni-channel. I've been kind of anti-omni-channel for a while. I joke around that there are only 2 things I don't dislike about omni-channel, the omni and the channel part, because I don't think it's about being everywhere. And this is really about this idea that we need to be one brand, even though we operate in many channels. We have many touch points. My experience has been consumers don't make the distinction that we do between e-commerce and stores. They're back and forth all the time. And this really, this has been an idea. Many of us have worked on these channel integration things for years, but I think the thing that really started to cause this blurring of the lines was really smart devices. This idea that we no longer go online. Going online is not a intentional, deliberate thing we do from our home or office. Now with a smart device, we really are living online. And so the moment that inspiration strikes the customer to be shopping, whether that's gathering research, putting a project together, or actually transacting, they can be doing that. So that makes the distinction between the physical and digital worlds much less interesting. So the idea of harmonized is trying to create this harmonious experience across channels, and it's really about thinking about the customer as the channel, as opposed to kind of getting hung up on how we happen to be organized or how our data is structured or our systems happen to work.
Well, Gretchen, it's a great place to start the discussion because, as Steve says at the beginning of the chapter, silos belong on farms. Now, you've got a fairly beneath and overtly somewhat complex business, right? You've got multiple channels, transactions that can happen online, transactions in the store, transactions online, then in the store, in the home. How do you stitch this all together with that customer focus, both culturally and operationally? Speak to how you're successful at doing that and harmonizing these channels.
Yeah, and sometimes it's easier said than done. I think for us, the challenge is we're selling organizing solutions, so the customer expects us to show up in an organized way in everything that we do.
Right.
It starts with an aligned purpose and aligned priorities. So that focus on the customer and understanding each individual customer's needs is absolutely critical because we do have different customers. We have interior designers, we have average consumers, we have big businesses, so we've got to be able to tailor to each one of them. But then it's aligning all of our priorities so that all of our resources and energy are moving in the same direction. I mentioned our foundation principles a minute ago, and one of those is communication as leadership, which is one of my favorites. But it's about having everybody on the same page. Both internally and externally. So internally, anybody who's servicing a customer, you think about creating these big solutions. Somebody may interact with an employee in the store, a designer in their home, an installer. All of those folks need to have the same information so they can serve that customer in a consistent way. And it's also about communicating with our customers and managing their expectations every step of the journey. And that's sometimes hard because communication requires good information in order to be effective, which requires data, which I'm a data person. I love data. But when retailers have grown up in separate channels that now have to come together, it often means a lot of that data is living in different systems. And trying to bring all that together really requires a focus on technology. So I spend a lot of time with my technology partners making sure that we can integrate all that data together and stitch that end-to-end customer journey. And then it's about keeping a pulse on how the customer actually feels we're doing. We're big believers in Net Promoter Score.
You bring all the solutions of in this case, a garage into one place. So not only can they go online, have a visit in the store, but it's really kind of bringing those channels together so they can have that store experience as well, right?
That's right. It's about making it easy because you probably saw a big picture before, a beautiful, well-organized garage system that looks incredible, but probably feels really hard to get. If somebody goes into the store, we want to make it easy for them to envision that, find all the product. But if they're going online, they've got to be able to search and filter in ways that they can find what really matters to them. It may be size, it may be color, it may be material. By room, that's exactly right. Yeah. We've got solutions for every space.
I mean, what we hope to accomplish today is not everyone has the scale or scope of every business, but there's some kind of fundamental lessons you can learn and take away no matter how small or large your business is, and that's what we hope to kind of achieve today. Steve, let's go on to the next essential. Tell us a little about memorable. And to be clear, memorable isn't Instagrammable. It means something different, right?
That could be part of it, but no, right.
Okay.
It's not the only thing. So memorable is the one that probably lines up the best with what we think about when we talk about remarkable, but it's this idea of really distinguishing yourself at a higher level. One of the things I talk about a lot, we've covered on the podcast many times, is that what counts for innovation at a lot of companies is really what I call a slightly better version of mediocre. It's these incremental improvements that they may be fine, they're not bad things, but they don't really leap you forward to what customers are expecting and competition is doing. So memorable is the way to really think about it. So a few component pieces, I guess, of being memorable. The first absolutely is to be unique. If you're not different substantially, you're not necessarily going to get noticed. Some of the things I talked about earlier. The other one, and this is the hardest one, of course, is to really be intensely customer relevant. Lots of retail, particularly if you go back to the 90s, it was really based on kind of like the peak of the bell curve, a little bit of everything for everybody. Those were many of the successful business models, and not only are we seeing department stores struggle, but the Bed Bath & Beyond, some of these so-called category killers, which are trying to be a little bit of everything for everybody, really were having a hard time. So how do you get that intense relevant, much like the Container Store does? Gretchen will talk about that in a second. I think increasingly it's also about treating different customers differently. So this is not necessarily about one-to-one personalization literally, but when the customer has all these choices and they can go out and find what they want, if you're not really curating that is an overused term for them. You may not really be differentiating yourself enough. And the last one, this is the these go to 11 kind of joke. I'll keep making really antiquated references, I think, at this point. But amplify the wow. What are those 1, 2, 3 things that really, really make a difference to the customer, that differentiate yourself from the competition? But to Mike's point, it's not just that Instagrammable moment that gets a lot of views. It's got to be something that gives you sustained competitive advantage that allows you to make money. I know that's not always a concept lately, but eventually you have to figure out how to make money. So those are kind of the 4 major pieces of that.
Gretchen, we were talking about memorable, and you shipped us your slides, and this is the one you chose to put up, which I thought was really insightful and an insight in the business, because it wasn't a really Instagrammable picture of the store or of the setups, lots of those. It's really the voice of the customer. So talk about how that, really that's where you want a memorable experience to be, what Steve has also called remarkable, to be remarked upon. Talk about how you focus in on that and look at this voice of the customer.
Yeah, for us, memorable is about how we make our customers feel. It's not about what we do necessarily. That matters, but it's about how they feel. And feelings are such powerful emotions, and those that are really strong or really negative are going to last for a long time. So our focus is making sure that we're delivering a great experience no matter what we're doing. And if for some reason we drop the ball, again, that's where Net Promoter Score comes back in for us, then we're absolutely focused on making sure that we're reaching out to the customer quickly to let them know, 1, that we care, but 2, to rectify the situation so that they leave with a positive feeling. Because at the end of the day, we want our customers to come back. We want them to tell their friends and family about us. And feelings are big. I mean, the Container Store is my happy place. That's one of my favorite quotes. It creates an emotion, and you can feel it inside. And that translates to our employees and everything that we do.
And everything you do kind of creates this calmness and relieves anxiety, right? That's the essence of organized. But it's funny, as you said at the beginning, listen, we're a retailer about organization. You want us to be seen to be organized and kind of take the anxiety out of shopping. Now, you've mentioned NPS score a couple of times. Can you share how important that is to the organization? And even if you have a score that you could share, I mean, how good is good for you, and how do you see that move around?
Yeah, no, happy to share and proud to share. Net Promoter Score, like I said, is important, and we're measuring it across all of our channels and interaction points and segmenting the data to make sure we understand what's going on. I'm excited to say that our stores score around an 80. 79, call it a quarter ago. Over the holidays, we were in 80. That's huge.
That's fantastic.
Super exciting. Now, obviously, we strive for 100. Yeah. So, we know that we have work to do. But again, we're looking at that. We serve that information up all the time. It's in our weekly executive leadership team meetings. We're talking through
That's a key element of the dashboard, right?
We've got a dashboard that all of our store managers, and they can look at it. They can understand where they're doing well and not doing well. And it's, there's opportunities everywhere. We can slice and dice it based off of those that are coming into our store, those that are starting their journey online but finishing in our store. So it really allows us to keep a pulse on the organization.
Yeah. Steve, you and I have been doing this a long time. When I heard an NPS score...
Thanks for reminding me.
Well, you started it with the 95 slide, so I'm just kind of following through. But, in my experience, getting to that 79, the high 80s, that is truly remarkable. You don't see that very, very often, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing, which I think is part of what you do too, is if you're not achieving those kinds of scores, is using that as a way to probe and understand what, that's a great way. There's lots of different ways. I think sometimes retailers spend too much time on things that don't necessarily matter that much to the customer, or they're just closing a gap. We're just going to kind of fine-tune things. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier, the slightly better version of mediocre, where there's that kind of optimization thing, which is fine. But in terms of really differentiating your brand, what are the drivers of that performance? What could you do? So I assume if your score sinks at all for any reason, then you're all over that.
All over it.
In terms of what? And then maybe discovering new things that could surprise and delight customers as well. Yeah.
We've spoken, actually, the three of us have spoken about this relevance and differentiation. And sometimes there's too much differentiation and not enough, indexing that to relevance, right? And then kind of that's what you're talking about. And we all know as retailers and folks in the retail industry that it's not easy to find people, to say the least, never has, worse now. But, I looked at this and I was quite intrigued. So talk about the relation of the people on the floor and what that matters and how you get them to where you get them.
Yeah, so our employees, what we call specialists, they're the heartbeat of our organization. And when we think about differentiating ourselves in a sea of a lot of retailers, many of whom sell some element of storage and organization products, it's about being able to deliver great service. And quite frankly, that's a point of differentiation for us. But I can walk into some stores and never see an employee, and they never see me. Our expectation for our stores is very different. So any customer should come in and expect to be greeted and assisted. We are there to help them, to help solve their problems, to understand their needs. And we also want to provide an air of excitement. These go back to some of those foundational principles that I was mentioning earlier. But the air of excitement is about creating the experience. It's about showcasing the products and allow people to touch them. We do live product demonstrations in our stores. And so the people they're the core bit of it. We spend time making sure that we're identifying the right talent, that they're as passionate about our products and serving customers as we are, and that exists everywhere in the organization, whether it's in our stores or in our support center or in our distribution center. If somebody is packing up products that somebody's ordered and they expect it to arrive and look perfect, we want somebody who's passionate about making sure that everything is taken care of to that detail. So it's a big part of it. We say this all the time, one great person equals 3 good people, and I'm proud to say that we've got amazing people. We've got a lot of great people in the organization. And in today's world, it's hard to hire people, so we want to hire the right people. We want to train them. We want to retain them. And that's what creates the energy and brings that air of excitement to life.
It really creates a positive momentum, right? I found it so interesting because it's really, you probably pass on more people than, you really want the folks, whether it's in the floor, in the call center, in the homes, you really focus on quality. Not that anyone focuses on quantity over quality, but it's a really important measure. Now, how do you maintain that standard with them? I was talking to a retailer yesterday, and they're a little worried about how much communication goes to the associate, because I think you want your associates to be experts in storage and, of course, the physical product. You no doubt roll out more than 1 or 2. There's been a fair bit of change in the organization, lots of different ways that you go to market. On an ongoing basis, culturally, how do you keep connected with everyone?
Well, we talk about it quite a bit, and we try and model that behavior, but it's about having fun and engaging our employees and our products. And so we do videos every time we're showcasing a new product, making sure that they understand how it works, that they've got the information that they need to be successful. And it's about how we engage them. Even things like Black History Month, and we think about all the celebrations that we do around supporting an inclusive environment. We're sending out celebration packages so that all of our employees understand and have common tools, and they begin to engage, and we have contests around that. But it's around creating energy in anything that we're doing to keep them engaged and just having fun. Having fun is a big part of it. We don't take ourselves too seriously, kind of cheeky sometimes, and we like to bring that to life in our stores with just creative. We'll have chalk art or show us your drawers TikTok campaign, and we engage our employees in all of those things.
That's fun. Steve, let's talk about the third and final essential. And for context as well, as you look at Steve's essentials, initially we talked about, and it's still the case, that some are kind of table stakes and others are more differentiators, right? And that needle continues to move, right? Some things used to be, that what was a differentiator became a table stakes. But really, as we get to the top of the arc of your essentials, you're really into things that differentiate you from the...
Yeah, just quickly, the first 6 become more table stakes. So in other words, if you're not doing them, you're probably behind. They're not likely to be the thing that'll give you lasting competitive advantage. Whereas memorable and then radical, which is really the one that I'm trying to get at about innovation. How do you drive innovation and transformation? Part of the premise here, which I touched on a little bit earlier, is this idea that disruption continues to continue in many cases at an accelerating rate. And customers are demanding more, competition is coming about, so having to aim higher as well as move faster in many cases is really paramount. So how do you do that? So with number 8, I try to get into some of the things, not everything. My next book is about innovation, so a little preview on that. But what I've observed, having worked in the innovation space for a long time, is that a lot of businesses get constrained by what business they define themselves in, or they limit themselves in thinking about customers in a very narrow way. So there's a line.
How they define themselves.
Right. And some of you may be familiar with Clayton Christensen's work and customer jobs to be done. But this idea of kind of thinking about the end result as opposed to kind of this incremental improvement. And when you define yourself as being a moderate, mall-based department store, or you can only sell products, or many of the other things that limit your thinking, you often constrain the available opportunities that are out there. But I think the other thing, and I'm still shocked all these years later that so few retailers have any sort of R&D budget or have really an innovation process or committed to a culture of experimentation and testing and learning. Now, testing and learning can be, A/B testing an email campaign. I mean, there's some things that are, I think, pretty well accepted at this point, but not trying different things within a physical store environment, not being willing, if a resale market is exploding and you're a full price type of traditional retailer, why wouldn't you test whether that may not work for you?
Right.
But the sitting back and waiting more and more is causing retailers to fall farther and further behind. And I think part of the culture is really how we see risk. And there's lots of sayings about this, which can be pretty trite. But I would argue the riskiest thing to do right now is to stay still or to move slowly. It's incredibly risky. And if you look at companies like Bed Bath & Beyond, not to pick on them, but they watched the last 20 years happen to them, basically. Like nothing that has made their business terrible was not pretty obvious years ago. It's that they didn't really address it in any meaningful way. They try to protect their core business, which I worked at a couple retailers that were very good at protecting their core business and defending the status quo. So
I want to just highlight that point.
Sure.
That because I think it's a very powerful insight for all of us and all of you that that staying still, get into the business you're in, not testing, not learning, not moving quickly, is strategically more risky.
Right.
Than staying where you are. And that, I'm not sure that wasn't always the case, but it certainly is more the case now.
It's more true, and this is a whole other topic. We won't give Gretchen her time to talk about stuff. But I do think, some of it is very much, it's fear-based. It's difficult to take some of these risks because that's not the way you're compensated, or you may get fired, or you might look stupid, or whatever. So there's lots of psychological reasons in addition to process, culture, et cetera, that keep us from taking the risk. But you have to, I believe, really reframe your approach to failure. And so the quote I have here is, if failure is not an option, then neither is success. That innovation does not happen unless you're willing to fail. It's not a matter of protecting against failure. It's, failing better, failing fast. There's a lot of cliches about this. So anyway, I think it's really an imperative for just about every retail organization.
So Gretchen, I'm going to take you back to some of the things you said at the very beginning. So if I recollect correctly, billion-dollar business took you about 45 years to get there, but the goal now is to be a $2 billion business. I imagine it's not in another 45 years.
Not 45 years.
And I'm sure it's a little
Way too long, yeah.
A little more advanced pace. Now, Steve and I have talked about often the risk of growing and accelerating. It's clear the risks of not doing it outweigh. But it probably, that kind of growth to me doesn't mean you're going to open a few more stores. Talk about both how you approach it. And this is anchored in radical. That's radical growth. So talk about the kind of couple of ways that you and the team are approaching that kind of growth from where you are today.
Yeah, we definitely are acting far more aggressively than we have in the past. But when we talk about risk, it's about calculated risk. And it's doing the work up front to understand what the opportunities are and the challenges. And then it's about going out and testing and learning around that. I think a couple big areas for us, just one on the storefront side. Yeah, we've opened 10 stores since 2017. We're planning to open 75 or more and call it the same time frame, call it before this decade is over and hopefully even sooner than that.
Now that store we were looking, if you go back one slide, Steve, is that an existing or is this a new concept store? What are we looking at there?
So it is a new concept, but it is an existing store.
Okay.
And that's where we're most excited because when we look at the opportunity out there, we've done the diligence. We know that we've studied the markets. We have opportunities to fill in our existing markets. We have opportunities to go to smaller markets where in the past we just couldn't justify going. But it required getting a smaller footprint that opens up the opportunities for more attractive real estate, but also more profitable, productive real estate, where we're going to see higher sales per square foot coming in, but doing it in a way where we can still tell our stories inside that store. Custom space is still a big part of it, and just making sure that we can showcase all of our custom space brands and create that design studio without compromising all the other organizing solutions. So we've got less of what we call our general merchandise in there, but we've got the right stuff. And so the exciting part is we just opened a new store in Colorado Springs, smaller market, back in September of 2022, and it's exceeding our expectations. So that gives us the confidence that we've got a great footprint going forward.
Yeah.
The other piece of it is custom spaces. We've talked quite a bit.
Let me hang on the stores there for a second, because Steve and I have talked often about the risk of how do you format a new store that is different. So delve into that. We're brought together here on the stage by our friends at Market Dial, and I think they act in partnership with you to kind of test and learn in terms of let's test, let's execute, let's learn quickly. Talk about that a little bit, how you edit the assortment or approach a new design of a new store.
Yeah, so there's a couple different steps to that. One is envisioning what it's going to look like, and so forcing ourselves to get out of our comfort zone and redraw the lines of the box. But then it's setting it up. We've got a mock store that is attached to our headquarters, so we can go set up the entire store in there and make sure that it looks and feels like a pleasurable experience. And then we're doing all the analysis around what products we're going to put in and which ones we're going to take out, and making sure that we're making the smart choices. And then once we build it, then we go and look at it and make sure that it's working. We're also bringing in some of the employees from other stores in surrounding areas. The ideal is to have a manager who's been in a different Container Store, so they know all the energy to bring, but they can also point out what's working and what's not working. And we're continuing to refine on that side. And then in general, when we're making changes in our stores, we love our partners at Market Dial and all the visual presentations. When we think about experiential and the discovery tables, that's all stuff that we tested. Because at the end of the day, when we go roll out some of these changes, it takes time, it takes money, it takes resources, and there's an opportunity cost. So we're wanting to make sure that we're putting it to something that's going to have a good payoff.
So it's fair to say the ethos is not move fast and break things.
No.
It is move fast and test things.
And learn quickly.
And learn quickly. Now, I interrupted you a little bit as you were kind of transitioning from the other piece of the equation in terms of growth. Talk about that and it really indexes into radical. I mean, changing your store design is one thing, but what you're talking about to amplify that growth is something different. Share that with us.
Yeah, this one's radical for us. We look at the custom spaces business. We've been in it for a long time. Some of the images that you're seeing here of our wonderful product, Alpha. We loved Alpha so much that we bought the company back in 1999. They're a Swedish-based manufacturer of modular systems. And Alpha's great. It's our bread and butter. But when we think about the custom spaces market, it's $6 billion. The majority of that sits in spaces that cost more than $2,000. So Alpha, it plays really nicely in that $2,000, less than $2,000, and it can stretch up. But we know that it doesn't have the potential to stretch too far up. And what we want to be able to do is extend into every area of the home. And I think now you're seeing some amazing images where we can create flexible solutions like Murphy beds, where now when people are working and living at home, you got flexible space there. Almost furniture-like pieces that take us into the living room and out of the closet. And even within the closet, we're able to introduce features that Alpha would never allow us to do. But it was
and to be clear, this is fair to describe it as a radical departure from the trajectory of the business, which was growing physical stores.
Well, how we're going about it is what's so radical. So we decided to make an acquisition just over a year ago of a wood-based manufacturer, and we felt like it was important to control our own destiny. It's one thing if we want to play in that space, you can work with a third party, but we want to control the assortment, the product innovation, the timelines, the quality, and at the end of the day, get more margin out of it so that we're not paying a middleman. And we're so convinced about the opportunity in this space that we went out and bought the company. That's the only acquisition that we've made since 1999. So that is a radical change for us, and it takes us into new skills and capabilities that require us to think differently. But we're excited about it.
So on the next slide, I saw a brief glimpse. What does Winston Churchill have to do with your business exactly?
Well, we strive to deliver perfection to our customers, but at the end of the day, change is inevitable, speed is essential, and if we try to be perfect in everything that we're going to do, we would get nothing done. It goes out back to what you were saying, Steve, that we've got to act fast and we've got to take calculated risks and be willing to test and learn. So what we want to do is go out with what we call MVP, minimum viable product, just like you see in the technology space. But it's with everything that we do, and then we learn and we iterate on it, and we stop doing what's not working, and we keep doing what is, and then we fix that which needs some fixing. But ultimately, that allows us to move a lot faster and get a greater return, and hopefully keeps us on the path to staying remarkable and profitable.
Talk about a little bit, expand on that, because I think it's such a great point to kind of wrap the discussion, is how do you inculcate that culture amongst your people of that minimum viable product? Because I think on the one hand, you do strive for, flawless execution in what you do, but on the other hand, you're like, hey, yeah, but we got to try it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Talk a little bit more about that and how you convey both messages that, on the one hand, doing an okay job isn't cool, but on the other hand, let's not get so hung up on perfection as we move forward. I think that's a real interesting balance.
Well, it is a cultural shift. We have employees that want to be perfect all the time, but are
perfectly organized, right?
That's right, perfectly organized, and we strive for perfection. But our fearless leader, our CEO, Satish, has challenged us to move a lot faster. And when you set ambitious goals, you find a way to make them work, and it usually forces you to come out with something that is good enough to get started. And then it's that commitment to just learning through it and creating a culture of it's okay to be wrong or not get it right. There's no retaliation there. I think we try and encourage folks to not celebrate what is wrong, but be transparent about it. Sure. And recognize that it's okay. We're gonna work through it. We're gonna iterate on it, and it's only gonna get better and better. And then that way, when you look back, you're like, oh my goodness, look at how much we've done. I mean, we have done a lot in the last couple of years, and I'm always amazed at how much. I've been with the company for 5 years. We have transformed more in the last 2 years than the 43 years before that. And so when I think about the next 5 years or so for us, as we look at the path to $2 billion, it's exciting. We're going to go out and try a lot of different things.
I want to one last question, and then we'll kind of wrap up today. I want to talk about the vendors that you work with, Marketile, of course, being one of them, but they have to share that philosophy and that culture. That must be as equally important to your organization as anything. So talk a little bit about the dynamic and the way you work with an organization like Marketile.
It's about creating those win-win situations. We're a small company, so we're not necessarily going to change a vendor's life overnight. We don't spend that much, but it's about finding ways that we're able to cooperate and collaborate. And I know Marketile, we started working with them as a startup, and we have ongoing conversations. We provide feedback and look at opportunities. And they bring
new ideas. I like that openness.
They bring ideas, we bring them ideas. And so it's been tremendous support, and I think that is the philosophy that we have with any vendor, whether they're supplying us products, the innovation side is critical, or if they're supplying us services on the analytics side, test and learn. It's just so important to have that open communication and to realize that we're a team.
All right, fantastic. Well, you can learn, this has been fantastic, so thank you for sharing. You can also learn a little bit more about the Container Store. Steve, you and I had the pleasure of interviewing Satish for the show, so let's leave it there for now. If you like what you heard, please follow us on Apple, Spotify, your favorite podcast platform, so you can catch up with all our great interviews, including Organized for Growth, our interview with Satish Malhotra, CEO of the Container Store. New episodes of Season 6 presented for another season by our friends at Marketile will show up each and every Tuesday. And be sure and tell all your friends and colleagues in the retail industry all about us.
And I'm Steve Dennis, author of the best-selling book, Remarkable Retail, How to Win and Keep Customers in the Age of Disruption. You can learn more about me, my consulting, and keynote speaking at StephenPDennis.com.
And I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer retail growth consultant, keynote speaker and producer, and host of a series of retail trade podcasts, including this one. You can learn even more about me on LinkedIn, and you can catch up with Steve and I in person at Shop Talk in Vegas, March 26th, and a month later in Barcelona at the World Retail Congress, April 25th. Until then, safe travels, everyone.